Hello, business owners. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to the video podcast, episode 2 of video podcasting. I'm so excited. If you're watching or rather listening on a traditional podcasting platform, you're very welcome to come over to YouTube or Spotify to watch the video podcast. There will be fun things and visuals and different stuff. So you're definitely going to want to come check us out over on those platforms. And then do me a favor. Please rate, review, leave a comment. I really appreciate it. I like to see what you guys want to hear more of. I want to hear what is landing for you, what you want me to make follow-ups about, all of that. So drop it into a comment, drop it into a review. I would really, really appreciate it. Now, let's dive into today's episode and to today's topic. Last week, we talked about the difference between a cash machine and a wealth machine, and how your business is really the cash machine, the thing that makes you money every month, but it requires you and your labor. And so if you stop, it stops. And so what you really need, in addition to a cash machine, is a wealth machine. Now, this week, I want to expand on that a little bit and do an episode on a concept that I have talked a lot about with my clients. I've talked about it on the podcast, and it's been coming up a lot lately, and it has to do with this idea, which is that you should not make your business responsible for your personal finances. Okay. So your business, it's not your business's job to hit your personal money goals. Now, you might go, what? Gina, you just told me to build a wealth machine with the profit from my cash machine. Of course, my business is responsible for my personal goals. That's the whole point. That's why I started a business to begin with. So I want to, in this episode, explain what I mean with that logic and go into why I believe this and why it is so important and what it messes up when you go against this advice. Okay. So first of all, what do I see happening out in the world with businesses today? I see people paying themselves more than what the business can afford and bleeding their businesses dry, in the name of, well, I have to pay myself this much money every month because that's how much my bills are at home. So they're overpaying themselves. They're bleeding the business dry. They're struggling on the business end, but they are not willing to budge on their owner's pay. I see people, they want something in their personal life. They want to go on a trip. They want to pay off their student debt. They want to buy a home. They want something on the personal side. So then they turn around and make a business decision to get it. Like, okay, I want to build a pool. So let me launch an offer in 3 weeks so that I can get the money to put the down payment for the contractor to build a pool. Here's why that's a terrible idea. And those are, by the way, just 2 examples of people making their business responsible for their personal finance goals. The reason it's a really bad idea is, number 1, it bleeds the business dry. If your business is your cash machine and you overdraw from the business, that is going to hurt the business. You are now hurting your cash machine. That's not going to end well, right? It might help you pay the bills this month at home. It might pay for your trip to Europe with your family. But if you chronically bleed the business dry, what do you think is going to happen to the business? That is not a good long-term strategy for a healthy cash machine. Number 2, especially to the point of like, I want something in my personal life, so let me turn around and sell something in the business, or let me run a flash sale, or let me sell something new. What ends up happening is you actually stop listening to what your business needs. Or another way of saying that is you stop looking at the business data to make business decisions, and you just do what you want. Now, that may sound fine. You're like, Gina, but my business is about what I want. But again, ultimately, this eventually slowly lowers your business revenue. Because if we think about it, if we think about like a business outside of your business, any business on planet Earth has to look at the data and make decisions, right? We have to look at the data of what's selling, what's not selling, what questions are people asking me in the market about my product, what feedback am I getting from my customers, what is sitting on the shelves, whether it's like a product or a service, what What are the problems in my business that need solving, right? Every business on planet Earth needs to look at the data that it has so that it can make better decisions about how to make more money next month, next quarter, next year. But when you go, I want a new pool in the backyard, or I want to take my family to Europe, or I want to pay off my student debt, or I want to pay off my credit card at home, and then you just jump to business decision, you have now severed the connection between you and the business's data. Instead of listening to what the business's data says, you're just doing something that you want. And now I want you to think about, like, what if you did that at a job? What if you weren't the owner of your business and instead you just worked for somebody else? Would you be able to just say, hey, boss, I know that we had planned, the next 90 days of my projects, but I thought that I would just do something completely out of scope because I really want to go on a vacation. What? No, you are not allowed to do that. The business needs you to do the business's tasks, regardless of what your personal finance goals are outside of that. Now, that's all on the business side. This isn't just bad for the business, though. It's also bad for you personally, because what you're doing when you're saying, my business will pay for that. I want to pay off my student debt. I want a new pool. So let me do something in the business, get some cash and pay for that. What you're doing is you're skipping the important lessons that you actually have not learned in your personal finances too. Instead of figuring out how to budget for the thing that you want with the current pay that you have, you're skipping learning how to budget by just funding it from the business. Instead of learning how to save and learning how to use your income to create the savings for the thing that you want, you're skipping that lesson and you're going, I'm going to pull the money from the business. Instead of learning how to grow your wealth and systematically over time contribute to your wealth machine, you're just going, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to fund it from the business. Instead of sitting down with, hey, you know what? I have 20 different personal finance goals, and I really need to sit and think about what is the prioritization of these goals, and I need to make some hard decisions. Instead of doing that, you're skipping it and you're funding from the business. So let's put these two things together, because now we've just created a very dangerous picture. We've created a picture where you have either bled the business dry or are in the process of bleeding the business dry, or you have stopped listening to the data that the business is telling you and you've just decided to do different things because you want them in the business. So you're harming the cash machine. And simultaneously, you're skipping the lessons that need to be learned in the personal finance money management side. And you're putting them together. And ultimately, what is going to happen? Ultimately, if you continue on this behavior, and this is going to sound very inflammatory and very, not insane, what's the word? Very intense. But if you really do continue down this path, ultimately what you're going to do is you're going to get to a point where the business can't afford to do these things anymore. And all of a sudden, you don't have the skills to know how to budget and save in your personal finances. And oops, your cash machine just broke because you broke it. You literally broke it. So now you don't have the money survival skills to survive in your personal finances, and your cash machine is broken. You're screwed. That is why I say, don't make your business responsible for your personal finance goals. All that does is keeps you relying on the cash machine working forever. And if it doesn't work, and by the way, it could be that the cash machine breaks for some other reason. What are you going to do then? Right? Now, Gina, that all sounds very intense. And I want my business to fund my personal life, and I want my business to pay me a salary, and I want to be able to do fun things in my life because of the salary that I'm afforded. I'm not talking about that. So here's what I don't mean, because I think a couple people have gotten this mixed up. When I say your business shouldn't fund your personal finance goals, I don't mean that you shouldn't compensate yourself well. If your business can afford to pay you well, it should. I don't mean that you shouldn't take any owner's bonuses. If your business can afford to distribute profit to you as the owner, you should distribute that profit. And you should decide whatever the hell you want to do with that in your personal finances. Last year, I paid myself a base salary of $250,000 on my W-2 because I'm a employee of the business. And that was like my base salary. That was going all year long. And my business could afford that and then some. And then, whenever my cash flow waterfall told me that I had extra money in the business that the business didn't need, I distributed that to myself in the form of owner's bonuses. And those bonuses were used to fund my wealth machine, to fund my wealth goals, to fund my trip to Greece, to fund my Schiaparelli purchases that I've made this year. I was able to use the funds from my business to do fun things in my life, but it wasn't, you know what? I want to buy a new Schiaparelli purse. Let me take money out of the business to do so. No, it was, hey, Gina, business here. Your numbers show that you can distribute this profit safely. Why don't you go ahead and take that profit and then you decide what to do with it? It's starting from the business and then it ends up funding all the things that I want. But I'm not reliant on pulling money from the business that the business can't afford to give me in order to hit my personal finance goals. Moreover, I do know how to budget. I do know how to save. I do know how to fund my wealth goals, even without the level of income that this business is creating today. I learned all those lessons when I started my money journey when I was 22 years old, and I had to literally pay $1,500 a month in rent while I was only making $3,000 a month total in San Francisco. I had to learn how to budget quickly. And you know what? I did increase my income by getting a better job at the time. And then I learned how to invest in the market and build my wealth portfolio on the income that I have. So I did not skip those lessons just because I wanted something in my personal finances. I have learned those lessons and the business is now fully profitable. And when those two things are together, you get something beautiful. Whew. It is so much fun that my business can afford to pay me so much, but the business can only afford to pay me so much because I didn't rob the business before it had the chance to grow. In fact, I knew that my business could not afford to pay me what it needed to pay me in order for me to pay my bills. So I worked for 2 years on this business while I worked a full-time job. That's what I mean. I saw the business numbers. I knew it couldn't afford to pay me what I needed. So I decided to keep my full-time job and grow the business so that I wouldn't bleed the business dry of its resources that it needed to grow. And now it is paying off dividends. So that is what I mean. This is a little bit convoluted, but I hope that this is helpful in that, like, what I mean and what I don't mean. If your business can afford to pay you well, it should. And you very much should make plans for that money on the personal finance side and should get excited about it. But if your business can't afford to pay you well, you shouldn't bleed it. And you definitely shouldn't change your marketing and sales plans just because you want something in your personal life first. All right? Okay. I think that's the end of today's episode. I think I've said enough. Sorry if I dashed your hopes. But again, this shouldn't be bad news to you because when you follow through with this, when you actually just say, I'm going to listen to what the business needs, I'm going to deliver on what the business needs, I'm going to continue to make good decisions in the business, that will always make you more money in the end. My owner's pay has been like a hockey stick in terms of its growth year over year. And it's because I didn't make it responsible for my personal finances before it could afford to. Okay? All right. With that, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take it easy.